Grace, you collapsed again? Unbelievable. Answer my calls, Grace. What kind of wife are you? Eric's voice blares through the phone, cutting through the ambulance sirens. I'm on my way to the hospital. I could lose the baby, I managed to say, holding back tears. The paramedics work around me, their faces focused and grim. Eric snorts on the other end. Well, we're here starving because you can't make dinner. Now you're relaxing in a hospital? Get it together. My throat tightens as I try to steady my breath. A paramedic looks at me with concern. You should focus on staying calm, ma'am. It's important for the baby. I nod, clenching my phone. Eric, I'm doing my best. This isn't about dinner. It's our child. His response is a heavy, frustrated sigh. Your best, huh? Seems like your best is just never enough. I hang up, unable to listen anymore. My heart pounds painfully in my chest, and not just from the physical strain. The paramedic shakes his head subtly. We'll be at the hospital soon. Just keep breathing. As I lie there, the thoughts of Eric's constant criticism and indifference replay in my mind like an old scratched record. Every harsh word echoes louder in the cold, confined space of the ambulance. Upon arrival at the hospital, I'm quickly wheeled into the maternity ward. Nurses move with practiced efficiency, and I catch snippets of diagnosis and concern. My OB/GYN, Dr. Collins, arrives shortly after. Grace, hang in there, she says with a calm yet urgent tone. We're going to do everything we can to make sure both you and the baby are okay. I nod, feeling a tear slip down my cheek. Thank you, Dr. Collins. Hours pass, marked by the beeping of monitors and the quiet hum of hospital activity. It feels surreal, a stark contrast to the chaos of my home life. Dr. Collins updates me regularly, her calm demeanor a lifeline amidst the storm within me. Eventually, the tension eases. The baby is stable for now, she says, offering a reassuring smile, but you need to avoid stress. It's crucial. I nod weakly, knowing how impossible that request feels with Eric at home. I'll try, Doctor. The room grows silent once Dr. Collins leaves, except for the soft ticking of a nearby clock. I stare at it, counting the seconds, trying to slow my racing thoughts. I need to find a way out of this. My phone buzzes again, breaking the brief peace. It's a message from Eric. Don't expect me to come. Sort yourself out. I toss the phone aside, feeling a surge of something I haven't in weeks. Anger. What kind of person can't even show up when their wife is in the hospital, risking everything for their unborn child? That anger simmers, providing a strange comfort. Maybe it's time I started thinking about what I need, what the baby needs. Not just what Eric wants. This realization hits me like a wave, both terrifying and liberating. The door creaks open, and a nurse enters with a tray of food. Time to eat, Grace. You need your strength. I look at her, nodding. I'm not sure what my next steps will be, but one thing is clear. I need to get stronger. Strong enough to stand up for myself and my baby. Strong enough to face whatever comes next, even if that means facing Eric. I take the first bite, letting the warmth of the food seep into my bones. It's a small step, a simple action, but it feels like the beginning of something bigger, something necessary. For now, I focus on eating and breathing. The fight can wait until tomorrow. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, mimicking the flicker of emotions I felt inside. Leaning against the stark white hospital sheets, I closed my eyes, recalling a time when life seemed simpler. 2 years ago, I was one of the top marketing executives at my firm. I thrived on the rush of meetings, pitches, and late-night brainstorms. It was during one of these hectic days when I first met Eric. He wasn't always this way. Back then, he was charming and attentive, surprising me with coffee during those long nights, showering me with thoughtful gifts and making me laugh. The memory felt distant now, almost like a dream. Losing myself in work, I hadn't seen the warning signs when our whirlwind romance led to a rushed marriage. Within a year, I was pregnant, and it became clear that my role would need to change. Eric gently suggested that I become a stay-at-home wife. It's only until the baby arrives, he assured me, his arm around my shoulder. I agreed, believing him, and at the same time, believing in us. But as the months passed, the dynamic shifted. Eric's patience grew thinner, and his demands became relentless. This once affectionate man turned into someone colder, more critical with each passing day. Nurse, I called, needing a voice to break my chain of thoughts. Can I get some water? My voice sounded weaker than I expected. Of course, Mrs. Green, the nurse responded, smiling kindly. Thank you, I murmured. As simple as the gesture was, it reminded me of basic decency, something Eric's behavior often lacked now. The nurse returned with a cup and placed it on the side table. "Try to rest, Mrs. Green. Stress isn't good for either of you." I nodded. "Please call me Grace." "All right, Grace," she said softly before stepping out. Her kindness was a balm, a stark contrast to what I faced daily. Eric's dismissive attitude wasn't confined to stressful moments. A week ago during a family dinner, his mother, Cheryl, pierced into me with her icy gaze. "Grace, this casserole is too salty. And don't you think you should have a better grip on household chores by now?" Before I could respond, Eric added, "Mom's right, Grace. For someone staying at home, you should be more proficient with these things by now." I had smiled tightly, swallowing the retort burning at the back of my throat. "I'm doing the best I can, Cheryl." "Well, your best needs to improve," she shot back, her eyes never leaving mine. That night, as I cleaned the dishes alone, I asked Eric why he never defended me. "They're my parents, Grace. I can't just argue with them over simple things. You need to handle it better. Handle it better." His words rang in my ears as I drank the water, thinking about how far I'd fallen from that confident executive to someone who now questioned her every move. But in this sterile hospital room, something new was budding. A resolve. Dr. Collins's words about stress and the nurse's simple kindness reminded me of a life beyond Eric's control. There was a world where I could be strong again, not just for me but for my child. I knew what needed to be done. Becoming that strong, independent woman again wouldn't be easy, but this collapsing, bending, and breaking needed to end, for my baby and for myself. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Dr. Collins, holding a clipboard. "Grace, can we talk?" she asked gently. I nodded, steeling myself. "Of course, Dr. Collins. What do I need to know?" "It's about balancing your health and any external stress," she began, and I knew this was just the start of a conversation about taking back control. Dark times lay ahead with Eric, but with each moment in that hospital, I found my determination strengthening. It wasn't just about staying healthy. It was about reclaiming my life, one day at a time. The sunlight streamed through the windows as I sat propped up in my hospital bed, sorting through the cascading thoughts in my mind. Just as I was about to sip some water, my phone buzzed. Cheryl's name popped on the screen, making my heart pound faster. "Grace, you've been in that hospital long enough. You need to come home and take care of your duties," she began without preamble. "I'm not just lying here out of choice," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to stay here for the baby's health." "Excuses," she scoffed. "You are a useless wife to my son, and it's high time you step up. We want dinner ready when Eric gets home." The line went dead, leaving me trembling with anger. I had just endured a terrifying health scare, yet all they could think about was dinner? Suddenly, the hospital door swung open, and Eric stormed in. "Grace, what's with you ignoring mother's calls?" His face twisted with irritation. "I was resting," I said, gripping the bed rails for support. "The doctor said I need to avoid stress." "You're stressed? What about me, Grace? I'm the one working all day to support us." "You think I don't work?" I shot back, surprising myself with the sharpness of my tone. "I just expect." Eric began, but he stopped mid-sentence as Cheryl swept into the room, her face a mask of cold fury. "Really, Grace? Making excuses to avoid your responsibilities?" She turned to Eric. "Your father and I never had these issues. We raised you with discipline, not laziness." I clenched my fists. "I'm doing the best I can, Cheryl. I'm carrying your grandchild, remember?" Cheryl snorted. "Carrying a child is no excuse. Women have been doing it forever without causing such a scene." Eric looked at me, his eyes void of any sympathy. "Mom's right. You need to pull yourself together." This was the family dynamic I suffered through daily, unyielding and often merciless. But today it felt different. Something inside me shifted. These people, all their criticisms and commands, they no longer had the power they once wielded over me. "You're right. I do need to pull myself together," I said, my voice firm. "For myself and this baby. Because this situation," I gestured around the sterile room, "is not working." Eric and Cheryl both stared at me, stunned. "Grace, don't make things harder on yourself," Cheryl warned, her voice dripping with disdain. "Harder on myself?" I laughed bitterly. "I'm barely surviving this as it is." Cheryl turned to Eric. "See, this is what you get for marrying someone so weak." "That's enough, Cheryl." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care anymore. You've both said your piece. Now, leave me alone. Eric's eyes narrowed. Don't push it, Grace. I met his gaze and didn't flinch. Get out, Eric. I need rest, and you're not helping. They finally walked out, leaving me in the suffocating silence of the room. The door clicked shut, and for the first time, I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. The realization washed over me. I couldn't continue like this. This wasn't living. I knew I needed an exit strategy. My mind flashed back to a happier time when I had friends and allies, people who cared. Maybe, just maybe, there was someone who could help pull me out from this abyss. It was time to reach out, to find the strength I'd buried for so long. The nurse shifted the curtains, letting in the morning light. I sat up, adjusting the pillows behind me. My body ached, but determination filled my veins. I needed a way out, and every second brought me closer to reaching out for help. The door cracked open. I expected another nurse, but in walked a blast from my past, ally. Her hair was shorter now, and she looked more confident than ever, but those piercing blue eyes were unmistakable. Grace? She asked, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. I blinked, feeling a rush of emotions. Ally, what are you doing here? She came closer, grabbing a chair and sitting by the bedside. I was visiting a business associate, and I saw your name on the board. What happened? I took a deep breath. Well, it's a long story. Basically years of stress and, well, Eric. Her smile vanished. Eric? Your husband? Yes, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I've tried for so long to make it work, but it's been a nightmare. His emotional abuse, his family. I'm barely holding on. Ally leaned back in her chair, assessing me. That doesn't sound like the Grace I knew. The Grace I knew was a powerhouse. My eyes welled up with tears. I don't feel like a powerhouse anymore. Well, she said firmly, it's never too late to change that. How serious is your health? The baby's stable for now, I explained, but I need to avoid stress. And Eric's not making that easy, is he? She asked, already knowing the answer. No, he isn't. Ally nodded thoughtfully. Grace, what if I told you that you don't have to go back to that life? I can help you start over. Her words felt like a lifeline. What do you mean? I have an apartment downtown, Ally said. It's empty and you can stay there rent-free. It's a fresh start. My mind raced. Wouldn't it be too much trouble? Not at all, Ally assured me. You focus on your health and the baby. We can take it from there. The relief was overwhelming, but realistic worries clouded my mind. Eric would never let me go easily. What about Eric? Ally's face turned serious. We'll deal with him. For now, you need to get better. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts. I know someone who specializes in family law. He can help you with whatever you need to do next. Each word she spoke felt like another piece of armor being placed around me. For the first time in months, I felt something akin to hope. Why are you doing this for me, Ally? We've been through a lot, Grace, she replied. You've always been there for me. Now it's my turn to help you. And I can't stand seeing you like this. Her offer was more than just a place to stay. It was a chance to rebuild my life. Thank you, Ally. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll take care of yourself, she said, squeezing my hand. And if you need anything at all, you call me. The conversation with Ally left me with a renewed sense of purpose. As she left to make a few calls, I leaned back against the pillows. I couldn't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, I could shape a better future. I had much to think about, but one thing was clear. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. I had Ally, and with her support, I might just find a way to reclaim my life and protect my baby. A few days after being discharged from the hospital, I found myself in Ally's downtown apartment. It was small but warm and cozy, a world apart from the cold, tension-filled atmosphere of my home with Eric. I settled into the couch, feeling a strange combination of relief and anxiety. Ally bustled around, unpacking groceries she had brought. You need to rest, Grace. Let me handle this. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you, I said sincerely. You'll do just fine, she replied with a reassuring smile. We need to talk, though, about the plan. The seriousness in her tone made my heart beat faster. What do we need to do? Ally handed me a slip of paper. This is the contact information for a great family lawyer I know. His name is Mark Jensen. He's got a reputation for handling messy divorces. I took the paper, feeling its weight. This was a significant step. When should I call him? Allie looked at me, her eyes fierce. The sooner, the better. Eric isn't going to let you go easily. You need legal protection. I nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. You're right. I'll call him tomorrow. The next day, as planned, I dialed the number on the paper. Mark's assistant answered, and soon I was connected to the lawyer himself. Grace, I've been briefed by Ally about your situation, Mark said, his voice calm and professional. I want you to know that you have options. I don't want a drawn-out fight, I stammered, fear creeping into my voice. Understandable, he replied, but we need to ensure you and your baby are safe. Document everything, every threat, every act of aggression. I shivered, the memories flooding back. Okay, I'll do that. We'll also file for a restraining order if necessary, Mark continued, and I'll guide you through the divorce process. You're not alone, Grace. After hanging up, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Days turned into weeks, and I slowly settled into a semblance of a new routine. Ally visited often, and her daughter Hannah dropped by with thoughtful gifts for the baby. One evening, I decided to open up to Hannah about Eric. Eric's not who you think he is, I began cautiously. Hannah frowned, her eyes narrowing. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. He's been emotionally abusive. His family, too. I can't live like that anymore. Hannah's face hardened. I work with him, you know. He's not exactly kind there either, but I never knew it was this bad. I nodded, feeling a bond forming. I'm glad you know now. Hannah's eyes flashed with determination. I can keep an eye on him, let you know if he's planning anything. Thank you. That would mean a lot, I said, feeling a surge of gratitude. Over time, Hannah's updates about Eric became a crucial part of my strategy. She reported his growing frustration at work, his dismissive attitude towards colleagues, and the whispers of a possible demotion due to his behavior. Each piece of information was another brick in the wall I was building to protect myself. One afternoon, I received a call from Mark. Grace, I filed the initial divorce papers. Eric will be served soon. Be prepared for his reaction. My heart pounded. What should I expect? He'll likely be angry, but remember, you're doing this for your safety and your baby's future. Stay strong, Mark counseled. Ally arrived shortly after, sitting beside me on the couch. Whatever happens next, you have support. We're in this together. I squeezed her hand, feeling the truth in her words. The battle was far from over, but I was no longer the same scared woman in the hospital. I was stronger now, surrounded by people who believed in me. As I held my growing belly, I whispered, We're going to be okay. We have to be. In that moment, I knew I had already made the most pivotal move towards reclaiming my life. The road ahead was daunting, but I was ready to face it, step by cautious step, surrounded by newfound allies and an unyielding resolve. I was at my weekly checkup at the hospital, waiting for Dr. Collins when the door burst open. Eric stormed in, his eyes wild and angry. He hadn't made contact since the divorce papers were served. I had hoped he'd stay away, but deep down I knew better. What the hell do you think you're doing, Grace? He barked, marching up to the examination chair, his face inches from mine. You think you can just walk out and take my child with you? My heart pounded in my chest. Eric, please, calm down. This is a hospital. Calm down? He shouted, his voice echoing in the small room. You're trying to ruin my life. Before I could respond, Dr. Collins entered, eyes wide. Excuse me, sir. You can't barge in here like this. Eric turned on her, finger pointing. This is between me and my wife. I stood up, facing him. No, Eric, it's about me and my baby, and you need to leave. His eyes narrowed, his face contorting with rage. You think you can do this? You think you can just leave me and everything will be fine? Suddenly, the door swung open again. Hannah stepped in, glaring at Eric. Back off, Eric. What the hell are you doing here? Eric spat, his anger shifting to her. Hannah crossed her arms, protecting Grace. If you don't leave right now, I'll call the police. Eric's face turned red with fury. You're just as deluded as she is. This was a mistake from the start. Eric, get out, I said, my voice quivering but firm. I've hired a lawyer. We're getting a divorce. He looked at me, stunned for a moment, then laughed bitterly. You'll come crawling back once this fantasy of yours crumbles. Hannah stepped closer to Eric, her voice dangerously low. Get out, now! Eric finally seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. He glanced between us, his teeth clenched in anger. You'll regret this, Grace. As he stormed out, Slamming the door behind him, I sank back into the chair, shaking. Hannah sat beside me, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "You did the right thing, Grace." Dr. Collins nodded, her face a mask of concern. "Do you want me to call security? Make sure he doesn't come back?" I shook my head, trying to steady my breath. "No, it's okay. He's gone for now." Hannah looked at me, her eyes soft with sympathy. "Are you all right?" I managed a nod. "I think so. Thank you, Hannah." "We're in this together, remember?" she said, squeezing my hand. Dr. Collins finished the checkup, assuring me that the baby was fine. But the encounter with Eric left a lingering tension in the air. As Hannah and I left the hospital, she turned to me. "Now's the time to stand firm. Don't let him intimidate you." "I know," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. "I can't go back. Not now." Hannah smiled, a fierce glint in her eyes. "And you won't. We'll make sure of it." As we got into the car, a new determination settled over me. Eric's reaction didn't surprise me, but it did remind me of just how far I'd come and how much farther I still had to go. The road ahead was uncertain, but I wasn't walking it alone. With Hannah, Ally, and the support of my new allies, I felt a flicker of hope. The fight for my freedom had only just begun, but with every step, I grew stronger, more resolved. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that this time, I had the strength and support to stand my ground. It had been a week since Eric's outburst at the hospital, and I had finally started to feel a semblance of peace in Ally's apartment. My morning was quiet until my phone buzzed with a call from Allie. "Grace, turn on the local news," she said, her voice urgent. I fumbled for the remote, switching on the TV just in time to see Eric's face plastered on the screen. Local businessman Eric Green faces allegations of workplace harassment and creating a hostile environment. Reliable sources indicate a demotion is imminent, the reporter explained. My heart raced. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, but a sense of vindication washed over me. Ally's voice interrupted my thoughts. "You see that? He's getting what he deserves." "How did this happen?" I asked, still in shock. "Hannah, she gathered evidence, reported it. She knew the right people to make sure it didn't get swept under the rug," Ally explained. Just as I hung up, Hannah walked through the door, a look of triumph on her face. "Saw the news?" "I did. I don't know how to thank you," I said, voice thick with emotion. "Don't thank me yet. Eric's not going down without a fight," Hannah replied, her face turning serious. We sat on the couch, the TV now muted. "I've arranged for extra security at your building. Until the restraining order is finalized, we can't be too careful," she said. The thought of Eric trying to retaliate sent shivers down my spine. "Do you really think he'll try something?" Hannah nodded. "I wouldn't put it past him. But you're not alone. We've got your back." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation, but also the strength of my support system. I'm ready for whatever comes. Hannah's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, frowning. "It's him. He's been calling, leaving threats." I grabbed her wrist. "What kind of threats?" She looked at me, eyes filled with concern. "Saying he'll make sure you regret leaving him. He's desperate, Grace." I closed my eyes, anger replacing my fear. "Let him try. I'm done being scared of him." The next few days were tense. Everywhere I went, I felt the shadow of Eric lurking, but I refused to let it control me. Ally and Hannah were relentless in their support, staying close and checking in frequently. One evening, Mark called, his tone somber. "Grace, we need to talk. Eric's lawyer reached out. He's going to fight the divorce hard, especially for custody." Of course he would. What do? We prepare, gather all evidence of his abuse, his threats. We build your case solid, Mark advised. I nodded, the determination in his voice bolstering my resolve. I'll do whatever it takes. Weeks turned into a blur of preparations and cautious living. Eric's demotion became official, and rumors swirled about his troubles at the workplace. Hannah's intel kept me informed, making sure I stayed a step ahead. Finally, the day came for the divorce hearing. Standing outside the courtroom, my heart pounded. Ally held my hand, her presence a steadying force. "You've got this, Grace. Show them the strong woman you are," she whispered. As we walked into the courtroom, Eric's glare bore into me. He looked disheveled, his arrogant demeanor now marred by desperation. I stood tall, ready to face him. The proceedings were arduous, but Mark was relentless, presenting every piece of evidence we had meticulously collected. Eric's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable and unfit, but the truth was undeniable. At the end of it all, the judge ruled in my favor. Eric's abusive behavior, his threats, the hostile work environment, all weighed too heavily against him. As I walked out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Eric's defeat was a victory not just for me, but for my unborn child. I had fought, and I had won. But most importantly, I had reclaimed my life, ready to start anew. The day I left the courthouse felt surreal. The fight was over, and I had won. And yet the future felt like an unknown expanse, stretching out before me. I returned to Ally's apartment, my temporary sanctuary, feeling both relieved and uncertain. A few weeks later, I was sitting in Ally's office, now officially part of her team. I was grateful for the job and the chance to rebuild my life. It felt good to use my skills again and to be surrounded by supportive faces. Ally walked in, holding a tiny blue onesie. "For the little guy," she said, handing it to me. I smiled, running my fingers over the soft fabric. "Thank you, Ally. You've done so much for us. Your family, Grace. And speaking of family," she hesitated, then continued, "I want you to meet someone." She led me to a conference room where a man in his mid-40s sat. He smiled warmly as we entered. "Grace, this is John. John, this is Grace." John stood up, extending a hand. "Nice to meet you, Grace. Ally's told me a lot about you." "Nice to meet you too," I said, shaking his hand, feeling a bit curious. "John is a therapist," Ally explained. "I thought it might help to talk." I nodded, feeling a bit overwhelmed but understanding her intention. "Thanks, Ally. I'll consider it." As I walked back to my apartment that evening, I felt a mixture of gratitude and doubt. Could I really put all this behind me? Months passed, and my life began to stabilize. I worked hard, focusing on my pregnancy and my new job. Hannah stayed close, her friendship becoming a beacon of light in my chaotic world. One afternoon, Ally called me into her office. "Grace, I have an offer for you." "What is it?" I asked, curious. She handed me a folder, an opportunity to lead a new project, something I think you'll excel in. I opened the folder and scanned the details. It was a challenging project, but also a chance to prove myself once more. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Ally smiled. "You deserve this." "All right," I said, feeling a surge of excitement. "Yes." As I left her office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Hannah. "Can you meet me at the park? I have news." I hurried over, finding her sitting on a bench, looking excited. "What's up?" She grinned. "Eric got fired today. They finally had enough of his behavior." A flood of emotions swirled inside me, but mostly relief. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Hannah laughed. "Just breathe, Grace. Karma's doing its job." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking and laughing, a sense of closure settling over me. That night, as I lay in bed, feeling my baby's kicks, I finally felt at peace. Eric was out of my life, and a new chapter was beginning. I whispered, "We're going to be okay, little one." The months rolled by, and soon it was time. I went into labor late one night, and Ally rushed me to the hospital. The delivery was intense, but the moment I held my son in my arms, everything else faded away. "You did it," Ally whispered, tears in her eyes. "No, we did it," I corrected, feeling the weight of our journey. As I cradled my son, I realized that the darkest moments of my life had led me to this point. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, surrounded by people who loved and believed in me. In the following days, I took up Ally on her suggestion to meet John for therapy. It helped me to process everything I'd been through and to rebuild my confidence. When I returned to work, Ally officially offered me the role of project lead. I accepted, feeling ready to take on the world. And so, surrounded by a new family of friends and allies, I stepped into my new life with determination and a hopeful heart. My son and I were ready for whatever came next, knowing we had already overcome the hardest battles. We were ready to face the future together.
My husband had been unreasonably ignoring me since Christmas. In an attempt to repair our relationship, I made a special New Year's dish and said to him on New Year's morning, "Happy New Year." Silence. I had hoped for a response at least during the New Year, but that hope was quickly betrayed. Despite feeling hurt inside, I decided to talk to my husband. "I worked hard to prepare a special dish. Will you try it?" Then the next moment, my husband silently dumped the stack of boxes on the table into the trash. "What are you doing?" My husband continued to stare at me in silence, with a smirk on his face. Seeing that expression, I reached my limit. I can't be with this man as a wife any longer. I then silently confronted him with the divorce papers. 1 month later, my husband's life would be hell. My name is Zoe Sanders, and I'm 29 years old. I've been married for 2 years and am a stay-at-home mom. My husband's name is Mark. We met through a friend's introduction. Mark, who works for a major advertising agency, approached me from the beginning. Having had few romantic relationships, I immediately fell in love and started dating. After 2 years of dating, Mark proposed to me, and I happily accepted.
I really like kids. I want them soon.
Mark, you're in a hurry. But I like children too. I hope we'll be blessed. After that conversation, Mark's expression turned serious. I need to go and tell my mom about our marriage.
I hope she'll be happy.
My mother will be overjoyed. I'm her only daughter getting married. Actually, I was raised in a single-parent household. When I was 3 years old, my parents separated, and my mother took me with her. I have vague memories of my father, and we haven't met since then. I think he was a kind person, but I don't know the details of their separation. I haven't inquired about the circumstances that led to their separation. But since my mother seemed unwilling to talk about it, I have never probed further. Since then, I was raised by my mother, growing up as the only daughter. Our life was modest, but as a parent and child, we supported each other and our bond was strong. When I reported my marriage to my mother, she jumped for joy.
Zoe, be happy. Mark, please, take care of my daughter.
My mother said this with tears in her eyes, and Mark responded with a smile.
Of course, Mom.
I felt the greatest happiness at the sight of it. I was convinced that I would spend my life with Mark.
That's right, Zoe. Did you inform Hannah about the marriage?
Oh yes, Hannah was delighted too. Of course, I'll invite her to the wedding. Hannah is the name of my childhood friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same nursery school, and stayed together until high school. Hannah got along well with my mother. Now she lives a little away. When I reported my marriage to her, she also told me that she was dating someone with the intention of marriage. After that, Mark and I registered our marriage and had a wedding as planned. Hannah attended the ceremony, and I was at peak happiness. The only thing that was a mystery was the gorgeous floral arrangement that arrived at the ceremony from an unknown sender. I quickly forgot about it. Later, I became a housewife at Mark's request, and our married life began. However, within a year, our relationship became awkward. The cause was our inability to have children. It seems it didn't work this month either. As I reported this with my shoulders drooped, Mark told me in an annoyed tone.
Again? When will you get pregnant?
There's no need to say it like that.
I've been saying I like kids and want them for a long time. Maybe it's because you're not making enough of an effort that we can't have a child.
I'm doing my best.
You're not fulfilling your duties as a wife, even though I'm the one providing for you.
With teary eyes, I looked down, and Mark left, muttering something. Mark not only blamed me for not being able to have children, but also started complaining about my housework. and I gradually became exhausted. 1 year into marriage, the state of our relationship was uncertain. However, I didn't want to make the only person who rejoiced in my marriage, my mother, sad. That was my determination. At that time, I received a message from my mother asking me to come and see her. Returning to my parents' house, I was surprised. "Mom, why are you losing so much weight? And what's the story?" To my inquiries, my mother quietly replied,
Actually, I've been diagnosed with cancer. I'll undergo treatment, but we don't know what will happen.
"Mom, I'll be by your side as much as possible. I'll support you."
Thank you, Zoe, but try not to inconvenience Mark.
In consideration of my mother, who was even concerned about Mark at such a time, I couldn't bring up the unjust complaints I received from him. That day when I returned home, I told Mark about my mother. "So, my mother will be undergoing treatment. I'll be going to the hospital for a while to take care of her." Mark unexpectedly responded with this.
Huh? Then who will take care of things at home during that time?
"I'll try to manage the household as much as possible. You might need to help a bit, though." Upon hearing this, Mark let out a disdainful laugh.
You want me to help with household chores? Don't be ridiculous. Listen, household chores will still be your responsibility, just like before.
"But..."
Also, I won't contribute a penny to your mother's medical expenses. Handle it on your own.
I was left speechless. Even in such a situation with our family, I expected a little cooperation. This hope was completely shattered.
If you can't manage the house properly while taking care of your mother, I won't let you off easy. I won't be kind enough to support a useless wife who can't get pregnant or handle housework.
Mark glared at me. Remembering my mother's situation and her request not to trouble him, I could only nod. After that, the days were hectic. I managed my time, making brief visits to my mother's hospital and taking care of household chores. My mother seemed to be undergoing quite harsh chemotherapy. It was difficult for me to witness her in such a condition. Since I started visiting my mother's hospital about a month ago, the season had turned to December. It was during this time that my childhood friend Hannah made a certain request of me. I agreed to it, thinking it was for the sake of my friend. And so the events of Christmas Eve unfolded. When I returned from visiting my mother's hospital, Mark was waiting for me.
Hey, you've really become miserable, you know?
Huh? With a condescending look, he suddenly said that, leaving me surprised. What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. You truly are the worst wife ever. I don't want to hear anything from you anymore.
What? After that, no matter how many times I tried to talk to Mark, he wouldn't respond. Since then, Mark started ignoring my existence. No matter how much I spoke to him, he wouldn't answer. Even a simple greeting like goodbye or welcome back was met with averted eyes and a sigh. Living like this, my mental state was gradually deteriorating. Being criticized was painful, but being ignored made me feel like my worth had disappeared. In the days leading up to the new year, while my mother slept in her hospital room, I received a call from Hannah. Yes, it was as I thought. Zoe, thank you. It's fine, but are you okay? I'm fine. Zoe, why do you sound so down? Is something wrong? Unable to hold back, I poured out the days of being dismissed and ignored by Mark to Hannah. She listened and sympathized, and that alone lightened my heart. After hanging up the phone, I looked at my mother, and her eyes were open. Huh? Oh, Mom, Were you listening?
Yes. Come here, Zoe. It must have been tough.
I had tried to keep it from my worrying mother, but everything was exposed. In that shock, my mother quietly told me something important.
Zoe, I'm going to tell you something now, and you need to listen very carefully.
Then my mother revealed something astonishing. After that, Mark's silent treatment continued. I, on the other hand, had been preparing special dishes since New Year's Eve. Mark, who had been ignoring me since Christmas, might speak to me again now that it's a new year. I hoped that these special dishes would be the catalyst. In our silent home, I quietly prepared the food. Mark silently drank beer and watched TV. Eventually, Mark went to bed before the date changed that day. After finishing the dishes, I went to bed, feeling downcast. The next morning, as I stood in the kitchen, Mark also woke up. Happy New Year! I hoped that I might get a response at least for New Year's, but that expectation was quickly betrayed. Hurt inside, I talked to my husband. I worked hard to prepare a special dish. Will you try it? Then the next moment, my husband silently dumped the stack of boxes on the table into the trash. What are you doing? Mark, grinning silently, stared at me while I panicked. Seeing that expression, I made up my mind. He attacked me unilaterally for not being able to have children and ignored me for more than a week. And now, this is what he does to me? I can't be married to this man any longer. I took out the divorce papers, always kept as a backup for my bag. I silently thrust them towards Mark.
What's the deal with having this kind of thing already?
It was the first time I heard my husband's voice in a while.
Fine, let's get a divorce. There's no point in being with a failure like you anymore. A jobless divorced woman whose mother is on the verge of kicking the bucket will be a sight to behold.
Mark signs the divorce papers while glaring at me. Having witnessed that, I took the divorce papers from him, packed my things, and left the house. 1 month later, I was at my mother's hospital when Mark called. I chose to ignore it and left my phone aside. However, the calls continued every few minutes. He was persistent, like a relentless ogre. I continued to ignore him. As I exited the hospital, Mark was waiting for me. He tried talking to me about something he wanted to know, but I continued to ignore him. We eventually arrived at the high-rise apartment where I lived. He looked around, dumbfounded.
Hey, are you living here now? Why is a jobless person like you living in a luxury apartment like this?
Let's go upstairs. I don't want a scene in the entrance. I led him to the living room of my home.
Hey, explain yourself first. You, with no significant money, how can you afford to live in a place like this?
Regarding this house? My father helped me out. He thought I might have nowhere to go after the divorce, so he offered support.
What? Your father? Aren't you from a single-parent household?
I explained the situation. I told him about my mother's request to contact my father, who was born into a wealthy family. In fact, my father was born to a very wealthy family and fell in love with my mother, who was a maid, and I was born. However, my father's parents didn't approve of their mismatched marriage. They continued to harass my mother, who eventually fell ill. To protect me from further harassment, he promised my mother never to be involved again and left. While pretending to have no contact with my mother, my father secretly supported us whenever we needed financial help. He even sent a large flower arrangement for my wedding. Upon receiving my call, my father learned about my and my mother's current situation. When we reunited, he embraced me, expressing that he had always wanted to see me. He promised to be on our side now that both his opposing parents were no longer around. Upon learning about the troubles I faced with Mark and my desire for a divorce, my father said he would arrange a place for me after the divorce. It turned out that he still cared for my mother, agreeing to help take care of her as well. So that's how I'm living in this house now. I found a job through my father's connections, and I received a large living gift, so I'm not hurting for money. Too bad you won't get to see my miserable state. As I casually shared this, Mark bit his lip, looking frustrated.
Huh. Even with all that money, you're still miserable. After all, your body can't have children.
What?
I saw it on Christmas Day, the results of the infertility clinic's examination. You kept it a secret from me. What a fraud. That's why I stopped talking to you.
Ah, so that's it. I finally understood. At the same time, laughter welled up within me. Did you even bother to check the name on those test results?
Huh? It was delivered to our place, so it must be yours.
Those were my childhood friend's test results. That was the favor Hannah asked me. She was about to get married and had the infertility test done, but she couldn't muster the courage to check the results herself. That was her request to me. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed as unable to conceive. What Mark saw was the test result I received on behalf of Hannah. You misunderstood, and that's why you kept ignoring me. I had the test myself, and there was no problem. If anything, maybe the infertility issue lies with you. Give it a try. Get tested.
What? There's no way.
In response to Mark's agitation, I asked the question. So you said there's something you want to ask me, right? What's the main issue?
Oh, right. Do you know the major housing company called A House? They're a client of my company, and suddenly they want to terminate our contract.
Oh, really? What's the reason?
They claim it's my fault. So, I asked them for the reason, and they said to check with my ex-wife. What the hell is going on?
Upon hearing this, I chuckled. Mark looked bewildered.
What the hell is happening?
Do you know the name of the president of A House?
Huh? I think it's Richie Anderson.
That's him, right? I pointed to the entrance of the room. Standing there was my father.
Huh? Why is the president Mr. Anderson here?
Mark stood up in amazement. Dad cleared his throat and replied.
I heard my daughter invited her lousy ex-husband to the house. What's wrong with me, the father, coming to see him? Daughter? Zoe's father is President Anderson?
Knowing everything, Mark was dismayed, and my father revealed the truth.
Now that I know what you did to Zoe, I have no intention of doing business with your company. Now get out if you understand.
Mark finally lost his composure and turned to me.
Zoe, if the contract with A House is terminated, I won't be able to stay at the company. Please, ask your father to reconsider. Let's start over. Let's build a happy family this time, even if we can't have children.
I pushed away the desperate Mark and shouted like this. You can't just say whatever you want. Who's going to forget the things you did to me? I won't entertain the idea of starting over, not in a million years. I'll never forgive you, you jerk.
That's...
Mark was covered in tears and mucus. My father, grabbing him by the collar, kicked him out of the house. Later on, Mark faced dismissal from the company as a form of accountability for the contract termination initiated by A House. Further tests showed that he was indeed infertile.
Even without children, we could have been happy. Let's remarry.
A mysterious and inexplicable phone call came through, but when my father hired a lawyer to issue a warning, the contact abruptly ceased. It seems Mark is currently residing in an old studio apartment while intensely job hunting. Despite his prideful nature, I hope he confronts the challenges of this lifestyle and lives reflecting on his past actions. On the other hand, as for me, I'm working hard while living in the high-rise apartment provided by my father. Following successful treatment, my mother is now living with my father. Hannah, my childhood friend, seems to have found happiness as well, as her fiancé expressed a willingness to marry her despite her revelation about infertility. From now on, I hope to take care of my family and friends, and find my own happiness.
Shut up! Don't get in my way by pretending to be sick. You're a useless housewife. I was feeling very sick, but my husband ran out of the house, shoving me aside. I suppose the husband and a wife were to support each other in sickness and in health. He left me behind. The word despair whirled around in my head as I slowly lost consciousness. Then, someone unexpectedly came to my rescue. I'm Wendy, 32 years old. I married my husband Sam, of the same age about a year ago. I was leading a normal life as a working wife. We met at work, and he agreed with me to continue working after marriage. We shared the chores at home, but he was not very good at them. I gave him only simple things to do in the end. He didn't show any reluctance and was very proactive, so I had no complaints about my marriage. At one point, I had been feeling mildly ill and went to see a doctor. Congratulations, you have just entered the 7th week. To my surprise, I found out that I was pregnant. That day, Sam and I shared our joy together. I'm going to be a dad. It doesn't feel real. That's how it is in the beginning. It will grow little by little. We were filled with excitement. I was full of hope for a happy future, but despite my expectation, reality took a different turn. Hey, where's my dinner? It's your turn to cook today. And you didn't even clean the bathtub. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well, so I couldn't do anything today. I was in a state of intense morning sickness in the first trimester of my pregnancy, and I was barely able to breathe. I felt nauseated all day and could barely stand. I spent most of my days at home sleeping. I couldn't even go to work and kept taking sick days. Sam didn't even try to understand my suffering and didn't give me slack. No work and no chores. He thought I was just being lazy. He blatantly showed his dissatisfaction and became grumpier with me. Don't rely on me just because you're pregnant. You want me to do all the housework and go to work? How can you be a mother if you're already like that? There were times when I thought to myself how he could treat me like that. At the same time, I understood that a wife who couldn't support him properly after he came home from stressful work was nothing but an annoyance to him. I thought about going back to my parents' house until my condition settled, but I was afraid to create an intractable distance between us. I hoped that my morning sickness was temporary and that it would stop in another 2 months. Until then, I just needed to make it work. That was what I told myself, but his disdainful behavior accelerated. The morning sickness somehow subsided after a little while, but the illness persisted for a long time. I was in and out of the hospital repeatedly, and I decided to take a leave of absence from work for a while. If I pushed myself too hard and something happened to my baby, I couldn't forgive myself. I discussed it with my doctor at my work, and we made a decision. Sam wasn't so understanding though. Don't depend on me so much. It's your fault if you don't or can't work. While that may have been true, my decisions were made to protect the baby in my belly. Why did he need to blame me? I put up his unreasonable attitude. It's about the living expenses. I only get a small allowance during my leave. Can you contribute a little more from your salary? I pleaded with him. What the hell? Why do I have to pay for your portion as well? He wasn't helpful. I questioned myself if I should keep being married to him. My anxiety grew bigger and bigger like a balloon. I thought everything was going to turn out well when I got pregnant. How did it go wrong? The final straw was my mother-in-law, Anne. How are you doing, Wendy? One day I received a call from her. She had divorced her husband when Sam was in the middle school and raised him single-handedly. She was very sharp, but gentle and treated me well. You should move around a little while you're pregnant. It must be hard for my son to do the housework while working. You need to take charge of that. I felt despair being told by her. She was not a bad person for sure. She had given birth herself, and I could understand her point of view. At that time, I felt like she was telling me not to slack and do all the housework. Especially if you're taking time off work. Yes, you're right. I was planning to discuss Sam with her, but I felt completely isolated after that. She didn't seem to take into account my feelings. Let me know when you need any help. She hung up the phone after saying that, but I was still bothered by the situation. Then, a disaster fell upon me. I had been feverish and lethargic all morning. On top of that, nausea came and went intermittently. I managed to prepare Sam's breakfast in the weak state and then laid on the sofa. You don't need to show off that you're sick, he grumbled and looked at me with disdain. I laid in bed after he left for work, but my condition didn't get any better. I was unlikely to be able to cook dinner for him. I contemplated ordering in, but then I remembered that our money was tight. The living expenses Sam gave me were far from enough, and I had to take out from our savings every month. In addition, my medical expenses for the upcoming birth weren't cheap. At that rate, we would have been broke before our baby was born. I called Sam nervously. I'm really sick today. I'm sorry, but I can't make dinner. Can you pick up something on the way back? What the hell are you talking about? You're a housewife. Yeah, but if I can't move, what am I supposed to do? I'm too busy. You go and get something. Don't make me do your job. After he hung up on me, I quietly wept. Later that evening, I heard the front door closing violently. Sam had returned home. Hey, honey, dinner is... Doesn't matter. I'm going out for a drink. At that time, my whole body was burning and I could barely stand up. I'm feeling quite sick. I need you to stay with me tonight. I begged and pleaded. He quickly shoved me aside and yelled, Shut up! Don't get in my way. You're just a useless housewife who pretends to be sick all the time. He then walked out of the house. I had no strength to go back to bed and collapsed in the doorway. Somebody, help me! I screamed desperately in my mind, but there was no one to answer me in the house all alone. Then I heard someone's voice from afar. In my fading consciousness, a familiar voice spoke to me. Stay with me! Who is this? I lost consciousness there. When I awoke, I found Anne staring at me anxiously. I was lying on the bed in the hospital. Wendy! Oh, thank God, you're awake! She happened to come over and called an ambulance when she found me collapsed at the doorway. You're safe now. Your baby is fine. I'll go get a doctor. Wiping her tears, she quickly left the room. According to the doctor, I was extremely anemic and had seasonal flu. If Anne didn't find me, the baby would have been in danger. I was feeling feverish all day, but I was surprised to learn that it was 104 degrees when I was taken to the hospital. But, Anne, why were you there? Sam told me that you were being lazy, and he wanted me to come and discipline you. He had been complaining, so she finally came to assess the situation and found me unconscious. I'm sorry. I didn't even listen to what you had to say, but gave you a lecture. There was another reason for her visit. I also wanted to thank you for this. That red cardigan looks great on you. Her birthday was last week. I had always sent her gifts on her birthday and for Mother's Day every year since I got married. I'm getting old. The cold weather feels harsher on me. I remembered she had mentioned it to me, so I sent her a cardigan. The color was a little bit bright to aid a youthful look, but the design was simple. Thank you for remembering everything I said. You've always been attentive and cared about others. I was concerned if you really did nothing at home, as Sam said. And then this happened. I'm so sorry. Her tears flowed as she held my hand tightly. No, it's okay. I was going to talk to you about him, but it just got a little awkward. I cried in front of her too. Knowing that she was on my side made me feel lighter. After we cried together for a while, she said to me with fury, He is my son, but what he did is unforgivable. How dare he treat the mother of his child in his terrible way? Her mouth trembled with anger, and she squeezed her handkerchief tightly. So, what are you going to do about him? I told her about my plan, and she nodded her head in agreement. I'm on your side. I'll always have your back. I made up my mind to act upon it after being assured by her. After a week in the hospital, Anne accompanied me back home. I didn't hear from Sam once during my stay there. That no longer mattered anyway. When we arrived home, there was a terrible stench in the air, even though it had only been for 7 days. I felt like my nose was going to fall out. What's that smell? It smells like a wild beast lives here. Anne almost made me laugh, but I had it back. The smell was out of this world. Sam was lying on the sofa in the living room, drooling and snoring. Wake up, you idiot! He was instantly awakened from his dream by Anne's scream. He jumped off of the sofa with a pitiful yes. Oh, what? Mom? Wendy? You've been away from home for days. What have you been doing? He immediately complained to me, but Anne put him in place. Wendy was in the hospital. What's with this mess? A zoo is better than this. She was right. In just 1 week, the house had turned into a garbage dump. There was a collection of empty beer cans and food scraps in the sink. Damp hand towels and underwear were strewn about. And the floor was sticky as if some liquid had been spilled all over it. It's worse than a zoo. I wonder how you were living here, I muttered to myself, and he glared at me. Don't talk so high and mighty. You're the one who... I doubt that even a baby would make such a mess. I had no idea you were incapable of taking care of yourself. I calmly stated my mind. It was actually true. When I thought about it, I realized that I did a fair amount of cleaning and laundry. When I was at home, at least it wasn't as messy as a cage in a zoo. I had never imagined that he was a chimpanzee with no life skills. Why did you leave Wendy behind that night? He was completely overwhelmed by her pressure. Men, no matter how old they were, always seemed vulnerable to their mothers. She just sulked like a little kid and told me not to go out for drinking. You're saying that she faked her illness, even though she was so pale with the high fever? Do you have a brain? She was a relative calm person, and that was the only time I heard her scold him harshly. He remained silent, glaring at me. How dare you rat me out? I could almost hear his mind. Then he uttered in a low, growling voice, Don't get carried away. I've provided for you all this time. If it had been me in the past, I would have shrunk at his anger. I was not such a timid woman anymore, you know? Well, okay then. You don't have to support me anymore. I'm ready for that now.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't need you anymore. Who in the world would want to be married to a big baby who can't do anything on his own? I was fed up with him. If it was just his outburst at me, I might have endured. Wait, no, I wouldn't have. I thought we could have worked it out through talks and therapies. He went out drinking while I was seriously ill. He trashed the house, unable to live as a normal adult while I was in the hospital. He scored less than 0 as a husband or a father. By the way, you said it was a drink with your friends, but I wondered what you were really doing. I gave him a death stare as I muttered. He flinched to my amusement.
That's none of your business.
Yes, it is her business. She has the right to know since she is your wife. Now, tell us the truth. Sam was trembling at Anne's harshness.
Well,
he fumbled for words. If you don't want to tell us, it's all right. You're already busted. I'll show you proof that you can neither run nor hide from.
You can't possibly.
At that moment, his face turned pale. Yes, you'd better come clean right away. You're not very good at this, are you? He held his head down and gave in to our insistent pursuit.
I'm sorry.
He raised the white flag. To recap, he had been having an affair with a co-worker since I became pregnant. It was a very common story. What's her name? Which department does she work in? How often were you seeing her? We interrogated him with a smirk on our faces. I stopped the recording on my phone. Well done. We have a confession tape. Thank you so much for coming out clean. When I cheerfully thanked him, his expression turned back to a grimace.
You tricked me,
he exclaimed. Yeah, so what? I can't believe you were cheating on me. You just saved me the trouble of hiring an investigator. Thanks.
You fooled me.
He was frustrated and blamed me for the affair. I couldn't understand his logic at all.
You were trying to grab my attention, so you played being sick. We are the same.
Not at all. When I saw him stubbornly refusing to admit his own fault, I began to feel more miserable. Anne sighed deeply and mumbled, You're selfish, arrogant, and a liar, just like your father.
No, not my dad.
He was shocked by the unexpected remark. It was understandable. His parents divorced when he was in middle school, and he hated his father. According to what I had been taught, his father had a mean streak and often got drunk and became violent. He never thought to be told that he was just like the man he despised.
I don't drink and act out.
That wasn't the point she was trying to make. I can tell you how many times your father let me sick when I was pregnant and went out drinking. I guess sons became like their fathers after all. If I knew I should have divorced him before you could even remember, she said in disgust and a little sadness. He remained still, unable to move from the shock. I would rather not have a father who is a bad influence on the child. Don't you agree, Wendy? Right, we don't need him. Or rather, he should be eliminated. After hearing the most convincing reason for the divorce, he was at a loss for words.
Why don't you reconsider? We're going to have a baby. Let's calm down, okay?
He still had his strength back and came close to me in a cock-sick voice, like a small child begging his mother. What are you talking about? We're long past that stage.
What am I supposed to do then?
He covered his face with his hands in distraught. I could see his eyes peeking through between his fingers and checking my reaction. He still seemed to anticipate a better outcome. Then Anne delivered the final blow on him. Enough! If you persist any longer, I will disown you. What do you say now, huh? What the hell, Mom? Why won't you stand by me? He finally seemed to give up at a point. Some said a woman's enemy was a woman, but in the end, a woman's friend was also a woman. She stood by me to the end. I filed for divorce in the 7th month of my pregnancy. I had never imagined that having a child was going to destroy our marriage. Maybe the child had given me a blessing in disguise. After that, I returned to my parents' house and gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I hadn't informed my parents about my trouble, so when I returned with a big belly, they were taken aback. My father introduced me to a lawyer who helped me negotiate the divorce. I was able to get alimony that took into account the amount of emotional and financial pain and suffering. I also met the adulteress and gave her a month full till I was satisfied. After the divorce was finalized, Sam visited me several times, asking to meet his son. I still haven't received my child support payment. When I got sarcastic with him, he responded with an incoherent argument. You don't need that. We are a family, and the best thing for us is to be together. He made no sense at all. You scored below 0 as a husband. At least fulfill your duty as a father to your child. If you don't, you are good for nothing like your father. He laughed in desperation, as if he had been hit over the head with a sledgehammer. He must have a loathsome image of his father in his memory. Rumor had it that he had resigned from his job. He complained to his colleagues about our divorce that it wasn't his fault, and it backfired. He seriously believed that he did nothing wrong. He told them exactly what he said and did to me, which disgusted everyone. At the same time, rumors of his affair with a colleague spread. No one felt sorry for him. He was seen as a scumbag in the company. He became isolated, and it was too uncomfortable for him to keep working there. He was a typical delusional man. I was afraid that he might have kept the illusion of us getting back together. Of course, I had no intention of doing so. Wendy, I heard you are going back to work soon. Are you feeling better? Yes, I'm much better now. I have to work for him. That's right. You're a strong mother. I don't tell Sam about it, but I sometimes take my son to see Anne. I'm not your family now that you're divorced. Don't worry about visiting me. She used to feel bad for me. You saved not only mine, but his life too. Now she holds her grandson happily in her arms. As you are an experienced single mother, please give me guidance. Of course, from now on, we're going to be sisters in arms, or fellow detectives who have driven the villain to confession. We have become more like best friends now. Well, this kind of relationship isn't so bad. Sometimes I feel uneasy though. You're just like your father. Her words stay with me. I wonder if one day my son will become just like Sam. Will there be a time when I think like father, like son? There's no point in worrying about the future. I will teach him right from wrong. I will tell him the importance of kindness and compassion. My son will be my son, no matter what. Nothing more, nothing less. As a mother, I will risk my life to raise him. The sunlight softly shines through the cold winter sky. I feel like it's cheering me on.
When I miraculously got pregnant at 42, my husband divorced me. 3 years later, he begged me to get back with him.
Pregnant at 42? That's disgusting. You are already old. What are you trying to beat at this stage? It's seriously impossible to carry out a pregnancy. We've been married for over 20 years. I've always wanted a child and worked so hard to have one. The long-awaited moment finally arrived, but my husband's profanity was so terrible. He looked at me with contempt as if I were a piece of trash. I felt anger that overridden my deep sorrow. I was determined to make my life with my beloved child and ran out of the house. In addition to giving birth at my age, I was going to be a single mother. It was not an easy road. Still, if I never had to see his face again, I gritted my teeth to protect my child. It was during those days that the worst reunion happened. I never imagined that it would lead to such an ending, though. My name is Lisa. I got married at the age of 20 to Ivan, whom I have been dating since high school. We enjoyed our newlywed life a little earlier than others around us. Although we were not well off, we were fulfilled with our daily life, except there was one thing. It was infertility. We got married before anyone else, but we couldn't get pregnant. In 5 years, our friends got married and had babies, but we were not as fortunate as them.
Why can't we have a baby? I think you have a problem.
Whenever people around us brought the news of pregnancy, Ivan got grumpy and insulted me. He made himself out of the victim and put all the blame on me. Why don't we go through infertility treatment together? If we can't get pregnant after all this time, we have no choice but to get proper help.
Why do I have to go? A woman gives birth, so the cost must be the woman. Besides, how much do you think the treatment costs?
It was true that infertility treatment did not guarantee pregnancy and was not cheap either. It also took a lot of time, so I could understand why he didn't want to go through with it. His words made me sad, but I was more pained by the coldness of the way he looked at me.
Most women get pregnant naturally, but you are seriously incompetent. I feel like I've been cheated. I shouldn't have married you.
He ended the conversation then and started watching TV with a beer in his hand. He had no idea that I cried alone every time. This exchange went on for years. I eventually stopped talking about infertility treatment. We were still sexually active, but it became an unfulfilled and meaningless act for me. Deep in my heart, I always kept the hope to have a child. More than 10 years passed before my wish came true. One day, when I turned 42, the hope I had almost given up on sprouted. No way! I'm pregnant! I thought I was dreaming. As I checked the pregnancy test, ready to be disappointed as always, I could not believe I was seeing before my eyes. Forgetting to wipe away the tears, I immediately ran up to Ivan. Honey, I'm finally pregnant! We're having our baby! He was watching TV and looked at me in surprise. Then he let out a prolonged sigh.
It's too gross. An old lady getting pregnant? It's nothing but a nuisance now.
What are you saying? I could not understand what he meant. When I was done, he continued talking one-sidedly.
Don't have a baby. It's going to only cost us money. Abortion isn't free either.
Are you mad? How could you say such a thing?
I have no feelings for you anymore. Just when I'm thinking of a divorce, you come up with trouble. Living with you is nothing but a pain in the neck for me. On top of that, I don't want to have to raise a child.
With a distorted smile on his face, he shooed me the weight with his hand. I'd been told a lot of horrible things by him, but I couldn't endure anymore. At that moment, I finally decided that I would rather live as the mother of a child than as the wife of a man like him. If that's the case, I would divorce you. I would take responsibility for raising this child. I can't be with a lousy person like you.
That's convenient. Good luck raising this child alone, old lady. Don't come begging me for help.
He made it clear that he would not recognize the child. If I had taken the advice of my attorney to fight for child support, I could have gotten it from him. I was just so angry and disgusted that I only wanted to divorce him as fast as possible. I ended up getting nothing after all. Such things were trivial to me at that point. After our separation, I immediately returned to my parents' home, and with their support, I was able to give birth. My long-awaited son was adorable, and I thought I could do anything for him. When my body recovered, I decided to look for a job right away to make ends meet. My parents were to take care of my son so that I could work without worry. After visiting several places, I was hired by the diner. The manager and his wife were very kind people. As well as providing me with meals, they also gave me leftover food every day. I was more than grateful for their helpness.
We would like to support you in any way we can. You can bring your baby here sometimes.
Thanks to the considerate manager and his wife, I had no trouble making a living. It was around the time I was getting used to my job. I went to greet customers as usual and was stunned to see one of their faces. "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" It was Ivan sitting in the booth. Just looking at his face was enough to make me anxious. It was made worse by the young woman next to him, who looked at me puzzled.
None of your business. I mean, do you work here?
He laughed and tried to make fun of me.
You must be miserable, working in a rundown diner, looking like a bitter old woman. Unlike you, I'm leading a very colorful life.
He began to talk about himself without being asked for it. The woman he had with him was the daughter of a very respectable family with old money. After marrying her, he quit his job and was training to take over her family business. He did look a little well off, wearing a nice watch and all. I cut the conversation short and had a minimum exchange with him. Despite that, I could hear him talking bad about me and bragging about himself loudly until he left the diner. The woman next to him, looking embarrassed, must have been having a hard time with him. I felt a little sorry for her. As I was cleaning the table, the manager came up to me.
Was this someone you know? He seemed like a very vulgar person, unlike you.
He's my ex-husband. I'm very ashamed of him.
Really? He came here several times in the past several years. I remember him well because of his behavior.
My mind went blank. A few years ago meant that he had been cheating on me for a long time. He didn't initiate divorce until I became pregnant because he wasn't sure if he was fertile. If the woman was from a respectable family, the issue of heirs was an important matter. A man who couldn't have children was out of the question. When I got pregnant, he was convinced and was able to divorce me without a worry. The fact that I had been cheated on for so many years infuriated me. I was unaware of the affair at the time of our divorce and didn't file for alimony. The manager's memory alone wasn't enough evidence. It was too late to gather proof, and there was nothing I could do to get back at him anyway. Is there anything I can do now? As I was trying to wrap my head around it, the manager gave me the contact of someone.
If you want to do something about it, you should speak to her. She will help you.
A lawyer or a detective?
No, someone who might be the stronger ally.
At first, I didn't understand what he was saying. I had no way of knowing at the time that she would unexpectedly make a big difference in my life. Then, about a year after Ivan visited the diner, I suddenly received a call from him. He wanted to talk to me urgently. I decided to meet him at a nearby coffee shop. As soon as he arrived, he let out a deep sigh.
I've been married to Mary for a year now, and it's really been hell.
Mary was the woman he was with. He complained about her family and lifestyle which he originally bragged to me about.
She's the same as you. She can't get pregnant. I'm really unlucky with finding a decent woman. I'm in such a hurry to have an heir, and this is really annoying. My in-laws are even saying that I'm the cause of infertility. That's bullshit.
I listened to his complaint silently, sipping my coffee without even nodding to him.
I envy you for being able to make a living with such a simple job. I'm told that they don't need an old man who can't even produce an heir, and they won't even let me work. It's just too much. I went out of my way to quit my job and moved in with them in the countryside. They're ungrateful people.
Do you have to tell me that? I don't have time for this. As I finished my coffee, he took my hand and squeezed it tightly.
I'm not going to go through all this trouble to live in that filthy countryside. Why don't we start over? You are poor and in trouble, aren't you? I will help you.
Not a single word of apology from him. To top it off, he talked nonsense as he saw fit. My anger reached its peak. I shook his hand off as I screamed at him, not caring about other customers around.
Don't you dare! You threw me and our child away like trash.
And that what? I even know that you were having an affair with Mary while we were still together. Why would I want to go back to a man like you? My shout attracted the customer's attention. He was furious to be shamed in public. He overruled it with an even louder voice.
You're making false accusations. You cast suspicions without proof. I'm suing you for defamation.
I flinched a little at his sheer intensity, but at the same time I laughed. My joy at the certainty of victory outweighed my fear. I will give her all the proofs she needs. At the best possible moment, the woman sitting in the next booth stood up. When he saw her face, he was so surprised that he squeaked.
Mary, why are you here?
Lisa told me you were meeting her here. She sat down next to me and faced him. I have a years-long record of our correspondence. That should be enough proof of our affair, right?
Wait, how do you guys know each other?
That's because of the manager of the diner, right, Lisa? I nodded in agreement. The contact he gave me that day was Mary's. She had been a frequent customer of the diner for a long time and was a good friend of his. When he saw her looking unhappy next to Ivan, he thought that she might be going through the same as I did. After much consideration, I contacted her and we hit it off about Ivan. We became friends who shared the same problem. She apologized to me repeatedly for the affair. She had even offered me compensation for it. Instead, I asked her for help getting revenge on Ivan. I've been listening to you talk for a while, but you are such a liar. You're not being let to work because you had an affair with the housekeeper. Besides, your personality has changed too much since we got married. It's nothing but a shame now.
You led me to the housekeeper because you don't get pregnant. It's not my fault.
When we took a fertility test, it was you who got a bad result. It was your fault. I wasn't going to blame you for that, but if you're going to use it as an excuse, it's a different story. Trying to escape from Mary who went on scolding him, He looked at me with pleading eyes. Mary prevented that by banging on the table. Are you bailing out again? Your life is so miserable. Quit and run again and again. I heard you call Lisa incompetent a long time ago, but you are an example of incompetence. Stop being a selfish idiot and pay Lisa the alimony now. Shut up! Divorce was finalized and there's nothing she can do about it. Why would I pay her now? Then she can sue you for emotional distress. She had gone through a difficult pregnancy thanks to you abandoning her. No way! As he plopped down on the table, Mary shoved divorce papers in front of him. I asked you to divorce me too. Of course, I will charge you alimony for the affair. Wait a minute. He finally started to cry and repeatedly hit his forehead on the table. What am I going to do now that I've divorced again? Have no job and no house? I can't pay alimony on top of it all. I would never cheat on you again, so please forgive me. How can I trust a man who has already committed adultery twice? You can pay alimony by borrowing money or in whatever way you can. That's how much pain you've caused me. He knew that Mary was so determined and could not be persuaded. He turned his tear-stained face to me next. I'm really sorry. I'll become the kind of man you want me to be. Please, forgive me. I thought about it for a moment before answering with a smile. Then, pay child support and become the man who will never appear in front of me again. Oh no, don't you have compassion? Since you can say it to me and mean it, I guess you don't have compassion. I'll tell everyone in this coffee shop what abuse you have said to me. I wonder how many people would be on your side. He finally gave up and reluctantly signed the divorce papers. In the end, I succeeded in getting back at him with Mary's cooperation. After he lost a place to live, he found a run-down apartment while working a few part-time jobs. He's doing unfamiliar work without a day off at this age and will continue to live like this until he pays off alimony to Mary. In addition, I'm currently in the process of getting his recognition of my son. A DNA test has already been done, so it should be just a matter of time. He will be responsible for paying child support soon. I can finally take a break now that everything is settled. I still keep in touch with Mary and sometimes meet her at the diner. We enjoy our current lives, laughing and talking about how we are going to find a good partner next time.
My brother, who thought mom had a lot of inheritance, kicked me out and moved in with her. However, the result was...
My name is Peggy, and I'm 35 years old. This is the story of my family that fell apart after I moved in with my 60-year-old mother. I lived with my parents and my brother until high school. My brother Neil, who was 3 years older than me, and I did not get along well. He was bigger than other kids and grew up to be the bully. He treated not only his classmates, but also me like his servant. He always acted almighty to me. When his friends came over to play with him, his attitude became even worse.
Hey, you slug! Bring us our juice!
He ordered me around.
She's so dumb and slow. She can't understand anything bad you say.
He insulted me in front of his friends. Even though our mom saw him bullying me, she would say, "It's great that you discipline your sister. You will be a respected man in the future." She praised him. My birthday was often forgotten, but she always prepared a lavish gift for him. My dad, on the other hand, remembered mine. He would secretly wish me a happy birthday, but he never protected me from them. When I entered high school, their attitude remained the same. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they became worse. I was thoroughly ignored at home around this time. I despised Neil, so that was fine by me, but even our mom joined in. Whenever they saw me, they both giggled. I never heard what they were saying, but it was obvious from their expressions that they were making fun of me. I decided to go to university in another state to get away from them. I majored in economics and then went on to work at an investment bank. In university, it was tough to be alone without family support at first, but I met a nice girl from the same state as me, and we shared a room in student housing. There was no way my parents would send me allowance. I studied and worked hard. Since I was in high school, I was interested in investments. After numerous tries and failures, I gained enough experience to make my own allowance. I studied all the time, but it was truly the first happiest time of my life without my mom and brother. 5 years after I started working, my dad passed away. On the day of the funeral, I saw my mom, Neil, and his wife, Amy, for the first time in a while. My mom asked Neil, "Hey, will you come live with me?" He simply refused. He still wanted to enjoy life alone with his wife. Then, my mom changed her attitude and asked me to move in with her. If I did, I would have to quit my job. I contemplated it and thought it was a chance to reconcile with her. Hence, I agreed to move in. I resigned from my work and got a new job working from home. Life with my selfish mother was not pleasant, but she's no longer ignored me as she had done before. A few years had passed since we started living together. One day, I heard a knock on the side door. When I answered, Neil and Amy were standing there.
Hey, long time no see.
He had not dropped by the house since our dad's funeral and suddenly showed up. It didn't matter how much time had passed, he still made fun of me. Amy watched our interaction in silence. I had met her several times, but we hardly ever talked. She must have been talked into by him and always looked at me with condescending eyes. "What are you doing here?"
I came to check on Mom. As a son, that's what I should do, right?
"I see." He acted like a big shot.
Anyway, what's going on?
"What do you mean?"
Don't play dumb. You got some of Dad's inheritance, right? I hear you're spending lavishly.
"Sure, I got some, and he also got it at the same time."
I don't really understand. You take care of it.
He threw the responsibility to Mom and me at that time.
Amy and I will take the money, and you'll be kicked out of the house immediately. You won't be able to afford any luxuries.
Luxuries? I never had any. Then Amy, who had been standing quietly, lashed out. "Don't lie to us. You're taking the money that Neil is entitled to." She pointed her finger at me. They misunderstood that there was some inheritance left. If I was that rich, I wouldn't have been struggling to pay off my student loan.
Anyway, I'm going to talk to Mom now and kick you out.
"That's right. The money is ours." They walked into the living room. "Doris, it's been a long time." Amy began to kiss her butt with a cooing voice as soon as she saw her. "I thought you might be having a hard time living with Peggy. I was worried, so I came to check on you."
Are you alright? Have you lost some weight?
Neil pretended to be concerned. "No way. I cooked every day and Mom ate a lot." If anything, she was looking a little fuller than she used to.
Hey Mom, do you want us to move in with you?
"Oh, but I thought you guys wanted to live alone." Since moving in with her, I had been giving her a comfortable life. I thought she would want to stay with me.
I realize that you might be lonely without me.
"Really?" Mom. She was not choosing me. "I would love to live with you and Amy." "I'm looking forward to it too." The three of them carried on the conversation on their own. "Wait a minute. I'm the one living with her. Shouldn't you talk to me first?
Shut up. You are no longer of any use to her. You are costing money just to be here. We'll take care of her from now on, so you get the hell out.
I'm saying this for everyone's sake. After Neil and Amy got married, they lived as they pleased. They rarely came back to see Mom. Amy, in particular, didn't know anything about her. I was worried that it would be difficult for the three of them to live together.
You don't know your place, do you? You're always causing trouble to Mom. I had no choice but to let you stay with her until now. Just get out of here, you beggar!
Amy, who was sitting beside him, also chimed in. Exactly! We don't want a parasite in our house. My head couldn't catch up with the sudden turn of events. I had no problem leaving the house, but I was worried about Mom. She had treated me poorly in the past, but still she was my mother. I wanted to take good care of her throughout her golden years. I told her how I felt about her future. Are you going to be okay without me? You are no longer needed. I'm going to start a new life, and you're in my way. Kapow! Something in me exploded. I wasn't indeed a good match for her. Despite that, I had been supporting her. There should have been at least a word of gratitude. Besides, I thought that I had developed some kind of bond with her. Got it. If I'm in the way, then I'm leaving. I bought a lot of furniture. Can I take those with me?
Whatever. Take them. No worries. We'll buy new ones soon anyway.
Neil laughed. When I left the living room, the three of them were talking happily. I murmured, "Brace yourselves," in a voice they couldn't hear. I quickly prepared to move out and began living alone again in a city far from my family. My work didn't depend on where I was. I could do it anywhere with Wi-Fi. I was so excited to be able to live a carefree life, remembering the old days. One day, while I was enjoying my free and easy life, I received a call from Neil.
Hey, there's no money at all.
He had moved in with Mom for Dad's inheritance money, but he realized that there was none left. Before living together, Neil had been in contact with Mom weekly. She bragged to him that she had gone on a trip and stayed at the fancy hotel, that she had eaten at the fancy restaurant and so on. Hearing those stories, he was convinced that Dad left a large inheritance that Mom and I were spending on a luxury lifestyle. He foolishly planned to live off that money. I told him the truth. It was my money that she was lavishly spending.
No way, you don't have that kind of money.
Well, I put about $3,000 in her account every month. Besides that, I was also paying for food and utilities. After years of experience, I had become a home-based trader and was able to make a certain income from my investments. There were ups and downs, of course, but I thought I was well off. It was the truth, but he had no idea. He interpreted what he heard from Mom as a great inheritance. Dad was an ordinary company employee. There was no way he left such savings and life insurance for us to lead such a luxurious life. Neil and Amy couldn't even figure that out.
What the hell? What are you going to do about it? I quit my job thinking there was enough money to hang around for a while.
He thought he could just get a job when the money ran out. Hold on, Neil. Have you ever met anyone who is living off inheritance?
Who are you to act so righteous? It's your fault for not telling me beforehand. You give us $3,000 every month.
Why do I want to do that?
It's your brother's order.
I wanted to laugh at his stupidity. Instead, I thought about educating him well as an adult. What do you think you are to give me orders?
Of course, a big brother has authority over his younger sister.
What a joke. Maybe if you are a brother who deserves my respect. You've never done anything for me until now. I have neither the obligation nor the duty to obey you.
How dare you speak to me like that?
Don't depend on others, you moron. Take charge of your own life. Mom, who had been listening to our exchange nearby, took over the phone. She went on trips, had dinner with friends, and bought clothes every month, yet she still had money left. She conveniently thought that she was so good at managing money. She had no idea that I was putting in extra for her every month. Listen, help me out and send me money, she cried to me. You told me I was in your way, didn't you? Don't blame me. It was my dream to live with my son and his wife. You don't get married, so I thought I may never see my grandchild from you. Didn't you make it clear that you were done with me? Oh, come on, I'm telling you. I need you now. As long as you give me the money, you can come to visit me once a month from now on. Would that be nice? I couldn't say anything more than those idiots. I won't help you or Neil. I don't even want to see you guys anymore.
Just give us the money!
I could hear Neil screaming over the phone. I'm not going to live my life being pushed around by you guys anymore. I don't want you in my life at all. I'm cutting tie with you, so don't call me again. Wait a minute! I will reflect on myself, okay? Mom hastily pleaded, but there was no point in listening to any more of her tones. I hung up the phone on them. My phone continued to ring, so I blocked their numbers. A few months later, I received a call from a relative and heard that Mom, Neil, and Amy had separated from their ways. Money was their issue. Mom lost her comfortable life. She could not travel with friends or buy brand name clothes anymore. Her friends started distancing themselves from her, and she lived in a studio apartment with welfare checks. She was always so snobbish about her good fortune, but it was thanks to her daughter. Now that she's kicked her out, she's fallen. It served her right, you know. The neighbors whispered what I wanted to yell out. She had tried to reach me through relatives and even used a private detective to track down my whereabouts, even though it cost her a lot. I sensed it before she could ambush me and relocated immediately. Since then, I lost all feelings for her completely. Even the memory of her disappeared from my mind. And then, there was the extremely arrogant couple, Neil and Amy. When they had no job and no money, and their lives were bleak, they fought all the time. Amy eventually got fed up with Neil and eloped with a young man. The man had some dubious debts, and he was being chased by shady people. They moved around, unable to settle in one place. Later, Amy and the man also separated, and she disappeared. Neil lived at home with his mom for a while, but he ran away with a small amount of cash. When they faced a financial issue, they had fallen out irrevocably. Mom was so angry that she reported the theft to the police. Although Neil wasn't charged, they became enemies after that. What was their relationship about? Growing up, they seemed like two close friends, but it was a fragile and calculating one to begin with. He was an abnormal person who took pleasure in abusing me. I thought they were connected by my presence. What an irony to kick me out and get kicked in the butt in return. Neil was later arrested for stealing cash and valuables from an acquaintance. He was unavoidably punished by the law. His employer, of course, fired him. His lawyer called me about his bail, but I turned it down without hesitation. I thought about attending the trial to mock him, but decided against it. I was also asked to appear in court as a character witness, but I was not interested in doing anything for him. I'm still a home-based trader, and my days are hectic. It has ups and downs, but I continue to live a financially comfortable life. A personal trainer at my gym asked me out one day. We are now together with a plan of marriage in the future. I honestly told his parents about my background and my way of life. They sympathized and accepted me. It has been a hard life so far. I will use it as a great source of nourishment to build a trusting relationship with my fiancé and his parents. And one day, when my family grows, I want to create a warm and happy family without any discrimination or prejudice.
My husband and his parents treat me really horrible, so the kids and I leave them, and...
My name is Rachel. I am 30 years old and I work in a company. I just got married this year to my husband, Dominic. The only difference about our marriage compared to a normal marriage that everyone generally has was that my husband had 2 stepchildren. Dominic had 2 sons, and they were from Dominic's previous wife who had passed away last year. The eldest son, whose name is Julian, was 10 years old, and the youngest son, whose name is Matt, was 8 years old. After marrying Dominic, I suddenly became a mother to Julian and Matt. But despite that, Matt had accepted me as his mother right away. Compared to Matt, Julian did not easily open up to me very much, and he always spoke awkwardly and was being a little cold to me. Well, knowing that their mother had just passed away, I was only hoping to get closer to Julian, bit by bit. Then, 2 years into our marriage, I found out that I was finally pregnant, and a healthy daughter was born. Although the distance between Julian and I still remained the same, he was very protective of my daughter, Sarah, and loved her as his own little sister. After marrying Dominic, our family got along pretty well, but there was just one big problem, and that was that my husband's parents would bully me non-stop. Both my father-in-law, Kurt, and my mother-in-law, Leah, bullied me whenever they had the chance. Kurt and Leah should have been happy to know that I got pregnant with Sarah, but instead, they both only blamed me for having Sarah, who had a huge age difference from Julian and Matt, saying that it would be easy for people around me to find out that they were half siblings and whatnot, and that people would talk and gossip behind our backs about it. At the time when they were blaming me for it, I questioned the humanity of these people, wondering what they were talking about. Do Kurt and Leah live their lives worrying about such petty things just so that they would always look good to other people? I really couldn't understand the mindset of these people. My husband and I were both working, so we often left our kids back at Kurt and Leah's house for them to look over, and which is why Dominic and I often had dinner at Kurt and Leah's house after work. Leah would sarcastically criticize me by saying, "You are a woman, but you do not do anything around the house at all, but just does what she has to do and has a child. What a disgraceful woman you are." And she would say such things like this whenever she has the chance, especially when the kids are not there. Kurt would also try to accuse me of something whenever he has the chance as well. I couldn't really remember every little things that they said to me in the past, because I have been lectured and yelled by both Kurt and Leah many times. What was even worse was that Kurt and Leah would intentionally leave out my portion of the meal at dinner and would share my portion to everyone else. And seeing this, Leah would say, "Huh? Your portion is missing, Rachel. But, oh well, you're on a diet, so you don't have to eat so much, Rachel," as she laughed at me. She's saying that I don't have to eat so much, but to be precise, I wasn't even allowed to eat any of it. And while all this was happening, Dominic just ignored the whole situation and me, and didn't even try to help me. What Dominic only did was just eat his food without a care in the world. In the midst of all this, the kids would try to be on my side. Matt would say, "I'll give you this then," and he would try to share his food with me. And Julian, who usually doesn't talk much to me, would also say, "You know, this is delicious," and would share the delicious food onto my empty plate. Seeing this interaction between my kids and I, both Kurt and Leia were not happy about it. But I ignored how unhappy they looked, and I just accepted both Julian and Matt's kindness towards me. I think the only thing that saved me was the fact that the kids were on my side. Without the kids, I would have had a mental breakdown and collapsed way earlier. But even so, Kurt and Leia's bullying towards me never ended, and little by little, I was being driven into a corner. But, as usual, my husband was being very unreliable. I mean, actually, Dominic is completely on Kurt and Leia's side. The other day, Dominic would even say this to me,
Don't you dare embarrass my mother and my father too much.
By saying this, it seems like my husband is saying that the fact that the kids are sharing the food with me is making both Kurt and Leia aware that they are being mean and bullying me. But isn't that what's actually happening? That both Kurt and Leia is bullying me? So why should I be the one to be always blamed? I couldn't talk to anyone about what was happening and my feelings about it, and I was just all on my own. I thought about divorcing Dominic, but I couldn't go through with the divorce because Sarah had just been born. And as I was worrying about all these things, before I knew it, 2 years had passed while I was in this miserable situation. And compared to 2 years ago, I had lost about 33 pounds, and not just my body, but my face and cheeks got thinner than before. My weight was average to begin with, so when I lost 33 pounds, I looked unhealthy, as if I were malnourished because of not getting to eat enough. The people at work must have thought that there was something wrong with me physically, because they began to be very concerned about my health. One of the people from HR even held an interview with me to check and see if I was being subjected to power harassment, thinking that I might be suffering from all the stress and pressure at work. And every time that interview was held, I would reply, "There is nothing wrong," and showed no signs of what was actually wrong. I really do think that there was something wrong with me at the time, as there were so many problems that I guess I didn't even know what the actual problem was anymore. And then one day after the New Year's, Julian, who was now 15 years old, suddenly spoke to me. Are you okay? Are you sure you're not pushing yourself too much?" I was really surprised that Julian had even talked to me like this, because I thought that he didn't really like me to begin with. And since I thought that Julian didn't really like me, I didn't really want to bother him, which is why I didn't try to talk to him much. And this is the reason why I have been living with Julian for many years with a distance between our hearts. But then, as of now, I just received such sudden kind words from Julian. And now, reflecting back, I realized that actually Julian was always there for me, even when I was being treated badly by Kurt and Leia, and even if we didn't talk to each other, Julian would even share his portion of the meal with me. And Julian would also take care of Sarah very well, and like that, he was really reliable. So, when Julian had asked me how I was, tears began to well up, and I cried and cried, as if everything that I had been keeping to myself just exploded. I know, it was pathetic of me to cry my eyes out in front of a 15-year-old boy, but I just couldn't stop crying. Then, while I sobbed, I told Julian about all the feelings I had been holding back until then. And to that, Julian listened to all what I had to say silently. Even I could rely on Julian, who was only 15 years old, much more than my husband, who was an adult. After I had finished my story, Julian had finally opened his mouth. "What do you want to do, Mother? Do you want to leave that man?" I want a divorce. I really want to just get away from that man and his parents. And I think doing that is so much better for you, Mother. I think you have really worked hard and endured a lot until now, Mother. Hearing Julian say this, it made me cry a lot again. I felt so much more better after talking to Julian about everything. So, after that, I talked to my husband and asked him for divorce. Anyways, I wanted to take my daughter and get away from this lousy man and his lousy parents as soon as possible. Once he heard about me wanting a divorce, Dominic turned really red and yelled at me. But in the end, he said,
"Oh, do whatever you want. I don't care anymore," and signed the divorce papers.
Dominic and I both agreed that I would leave the house in a week, so that I would have the time to pack my things and my daughter's things. Then, while I was getting busy packing our things, Julian spoke to me once again. If it is possible and if it's okay with you, could you take us with you?" "What do you mean?" "Well, actually..." Julian then began to tell me the most horrible story I have ever heard of Dominic. That man burned all the photos of our mother that Matt and I treasured so much, since that was the only memory we have of her. He also wouldn't let Matt and I go to our grandparents' place, who is on our mother's side, and we both still haven't been able to see and greet them properly even after our mother passed away. Plus, Matt and I haven't even been allowed to visit our own mother's grave. I heard that our grandparents on our mother's side also wants to come see us, but that stupid man is telling them not to visit us. I was absolutely mortified and speechless when I heard that story. Kurt and Leia are terrible, but my husband is just as terrible as them. I really wanted to take Julian and Matt with me as well. When I told him this, Julian looked really relieved and laughed. I felt as if this was the first time ever I saw Julian's genuine smile. He then thanked me, saying, "Thank you so much. And I am also really sorry for being so awkward and cold around you until now." And for the first time, I felt as if I had become a proper mother to my eldest son, Julian. After that, Matt joined into the discussion. "I want to go with you too, Mother." I was really determined to take them both with me. I then contacted Julian and Matt's maternal family and took them to meet their grandparents finally. Their grandparents cried when they finally got to see their grandchildren for the first time in years. It seems like the grandparents were always worried about how Julian and Matt were doing. I then told them that I was in the middle of divorcing Dominic and wanted to take Julian and Matt with me. They agreed to my idea, and not just the grandparents, but the uncles and aunts of Julian and Matt also offered to provide financial support for me to take Julian and Matt away from Dominic. As I was going to be a single mother after I divorced Dominic, this was such a generous offer I could ever get in my life. So, I decided to take their word for it. Both Julian and Matt were also very happy that they would be able to see their grandparents whenever they wanted. And they both had smiles on their faces that they had never shown at home before. A few days later, Dominic, Kurt and Leah, Julia and Matt, and I had a big family meeting at Kurt and Leah's house. As for my daughter Sarah, I left her at my parents' house. My husband has a really short temper, so I thought that Sarah could wake up and cry when Dominic lost his temper during our discussion. When I told Kurt and Leah about the divorce, they got very furious and angry, and they screamed at me, saying terrible things to me. What kind of woman and a mother are you? I have never met a woman like you, and you are just the worst.
What do you think you're doing with our son? Do you think that he's an ATM machine who just provides the family with money?
That's why I didn't want Dominic to marry someone like you, and I was against the whole marriage in the first place. You irresponsible, selfish woman. You should go to hell.
My goodness, even I feel like I got tricked into marrying a woman like you. I can't believe that you were such a horrible woman. I truly feel like I've been scammed.
How could they even ignore the fact about what they have been saying and doing things to me all these years and still say such terrible things to me? I ignored the words of what Dominic, Kurt, and Leah had said and proceeded to ask, "Is it correct that I get custody of Sarah?" and tried to continue with the discussion. Kurt and Leah both expressed their disapproval that their insults didn't get to me and said, "Of course, you should take Sarah with you," in a very uninterested manner. I guess they feel that since Sarah is a girl and girls are not compatible to be the family's heir, they didn't want her.
Well then, that's the end of our discussion. Since you've finished packing your bags, then get the hell out of here.
I'm glad a disease like you will be gone from our house. And at that moment, Julian began to open his mouth. I have something to say.
What do you want?
Matt and I are also leaving with Mother.
Huh? What the hell are you saying?
We don't want to continue living with you anymore. You ignore everything terrible about what you did and what you said to Mother. But from our point of view, Mother was a much better parent than you.
What did you just say, you piece of shit? How dare you talk to your own father like that? All you both have to do is just obey and listen to what I have to say.
That's what I'm exactly talking about. And that's exactly what I can't stand about you. That you try to control everything and everyone so that everything would just go your way. Even our mother who passed away, she suffered so much pain because you were being like that. And in the end, she took her own life because of you. And not only you, but Kurt and Leah, this is all your fault too. You used to talk to our mother who passed away just as bad as how you talk to our mother right now. Did you think we wouldn't notice what you were all doing just because we were kids? You are all terrible people, and you all disgust me so much. Matt and I are both so ashamed to be related to people like you." Julian's harsh words pierced right through Dominic's, Kurt's, and Leia's hearts. Both Kurt and Leia looked down in silence, as if they could not say anything back to Julian. But Dominic was trembling, and because of his stupid pride, he shouted,
Shut up! I don't want to be with you and Matt anymore. Get out of here, all of you!
And seeing my husband, who was completely freaked out about what Julian had said, didn't seem to be scary at all to me anymore. So, before we left, we looked at Dominic while we all glared at him, and I said, "Well then, I guess we won't be seeing each other ever again. Goodbye." And we all left the house together. Well, I was still willing to take whatever I could get, so I hired a lawyer and filed for compensation because of the emotional distress Dominic, Kurt, and Leia had caused, and for child support. Afterwards, I moved into a newly rented apartment with my beloved Julian, Matt, and Sarah. With the support of my son's grandparents and aunts and uncles, as well as the child support, we were all able to live in a reasonably nice apartment. Each of the kids get to have their own rooms, and I would have my own room too. There will be many challenges and difficulties ahead as a single mother, but with the help of my sons and my daughter, we will work together as a family to overcome these obstacles. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
It can't be helped if you've found out. Yeah, I've been cheating on you. Let's just get a divorce then.
My husband didn't seem guilty at all. He's such a jerk. I have no idea why I married this man. When I told my brother what happened, he just laughed with a big smile on his face.
Well, good for you.
What's so good about it? I was appalled at my brother's lack of delicacy, but I never thought something like that would happen.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
As I saw my husband on his knees apologizing, I recalled my brother's words. My name is Catherine, and I'm a 34-year-old housewife. My husband Simon and I have been married for 2 years. We met through work. We met when we were clients of each other's company we worked for. He is 2 years older than me and seemed very dependable. In fact, he was the one who was leading at work, and things went well thanks to him. So I thought he was cool because he was manly and good at his job. Then one day he asked me out to dinner. It was a celebration for a job well done. That brought us closer, and we started going on regular dates. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings for me, and we started dating. We continued to date steadily, and after about a year of dating, he proposed to me.
I need you, Catherine. So, will you marry me?
Yes, of course. And so we were to be married. Soon after that, we went to greet each other's parents. He was a sincere man, so my parents liked him very much. I went to greet his parents next, and they were very friendly and kind people, and they liked me too. After that, we had a dinner, so our parents could meet each other. And so, he and I got married. Many friends and people from work attended our ceremony, and I think it turned out to be a very nice one. Then, we went on our honeymoon and started living together after returning home. I enjoyed my newlywed life very much. My husband wanted me to be a housewife, so I listened and concentrated on housework. I cooked elaborate meals for my husband, who worked very hard every day. My husband eats my food every day, showing great satisfaction.
The dinner is delicious, but the lunch you made for me was also undeniably great. So many of the women at work complimented me on my lunch. They said that they can see that I'm loved.
I'll make you an elaborate lunch every day.
Yes, please. I'm looking forward to it.
I was very happy to hear my husband say that. It's especially nice to get compliments from people of the same gender. After that, I became very particular about the lunch I made for him. Every day, I made lunch boxes that were nutritionally balanced, colorful, and satisfying. I felt a sense of accomplishment from making so many nice lunches, and I began to take pictures to keep record. I look at the growing folder of photos and congratulate myself on a job well done. In this way, I supported my husband as a housewife while doing my best at housework. I hope that my lunches will give my husband strength and that he will be able to give his all in his work. That's how I spent my days. My husband works hard at his job every day. Or so I believed. 2 years have passed in the blink of an eye after living such a life. My relationship with my husband is as good as before. However, he seems to be busy at work these days, frequently working overtime, and he sometimes has to work on his days off. The only thing I can do to cheer him up is to cook him delicious food. Even if he was working on his days off, I would make him lunch. It wasn't hard at all if I thought it was for my husband. In fact, I felt like I was cheering him on, which made me happy. Then one day, my friend Brooke invited me out to dinner. My husband was working on his day off that day, and he said he was going out for drinks with his high school classmates for dinner. So I didn't have to worry about preparing dinner. My friend had been away from the country for a while on an overseas business trip, so I hadn't been able to see her very often. So I accepted her invitation just like that. My friend hadn't returned to the country for a while, so we went to eat some barbecue. I felt bad for my husband if we went to an expensive restaurant, so we went to a common chain barbecue restaurant. But my friend said it was very delicious and we had a delightful time. After all, it's nice to meet up with old friends like this. Since I got married, I've been working hard as a full-time housewife, so I didn't have so many chances to spend time with people other than my husband. So just talking with my friend was very inspiring. Besides, my friend works for a foreign company and is what you might call a career woman. I think it's cool to see her achieving results while working so freely. Brooke, you're really amazing. I feel like you're so far away from me now. What are you talking about? I think it's great that you work so hard at cooking and to keep the house in order. You always make lunch for your husband, don't you? Yes, every day without fail. That's really something. By the way, what kind of lunch do you make? I've been thinking about cooking for myself too. Lately, I've been learning from posts online. Oh, really? I was convinced that her diligence is the reason why my friend is so successful. Well, I make things like these. I opened the folder of photo lunches in my phone and showed her. What? You made all of these? That's amazing. They're just like the ones on social media, and they look so delicious. Of course this would make your husband happy. I was happy to hear my friend say that. My hard work seems to be getting through. Of course, I was happy that my husband's coworkers were praising my efforts, but having someone I actually know praise me directly makes me feel even more confident. But then, Brooke stopped to look back at one of the photos. Wait, I think I saw the same one on social media the other day. What? No way. I've never made something by looking at someone else's recipe or photo. I thought it would be unoriginal. I think about my husband and rely on myself to make his lunch more colorful and to make a variety of foods for him. So I was very surprised at my friend's remark. Look at this! My friend showed me a post on her phone. What? This is the very lunch I made. Yeah, the lunchbox is the same as well. My friend had been searching for posts with hashtags like handmade lunch and cooking for myself on social media and adding them to her favorites, thinking of using them as a reference when she makes her own lunch in the future. She said she had no connection with the account that posted the lunch in the picture. The owner of the post was bragging that she had made the lunch. The photos were apparently taken outdoors, at a table in a park or something, and not at home. In addition, other photos also showed the same lunch as the ones I had made in the past. What does this all mean? Did it just happen that the lunchbox I use and the recipe and appearance of the lunch are exactly the same? No, such a miracle would never happen. I had a very bad thought. That is, my husband is connected to this woman, and she is taking pictures of the lunches I make for him. In that case, there is a very high possibility that my husband and this woman are having an affair. Since then, I have been keeping an eye out for the posts on this account. She had uploaded a picture of her face before, and she looks quite young, probably in her early 20s. Maybe she is a new employee at my husband's company. A week after I found this post, the account owner posted a new photo. I was out of words, because it was definitely the lunch I made for my husband that morning. The photo was captioned, "I cooked myself lunch even on my day off." This is definitely someone who is related to my husband, and it's almost certain that it's someone from the company he works with. I couldn't stop but feel lost at my feelings, so I immediately decided to go to the company where my husband worked. At a cafe right in front of his office, I carefully observed the entrance. Then I saw my husband coming out. At first, I was relieved to see him come out alone, but a few seconds later, a woman followed him out, and she tangled herself in my husband's arms. Not only was the woman entwined with my husband, but she was the owner of that account. I don't know if I was hoping for something different, but I felt a mixed up feeling of shock, and I knew it. My emotions were so jumbled up that I almost collapsed on the spot, but I did my best to keep my emotions in check. I called my friend and told her that I found out that my husband was having an affair. My friend immediately came over and comforted me. Then I got a call from my husband that he was going out for a drink tonight and didn't need dinner. He must be with that woman. My emotions were even more messed up. I don't know what I would have done without my friend. I went into the bedroom as soon as I got home. I wanted to fall asleep before my husband got home. I took some sleeping pills and managed to fall asleep. The next morning, I woke up to find my husband lying beside me. Seeing him sleeping so comfortably, my emotions were all messed up again. I almost cried while making breakfast. Then my husband woke up at an inopportune moment.
Good morning.
I hurriedly wiped away my tears and replied without looking at him. Good morning. What time did you come home last night? I didn't notice at all.
Oh, it was around 2 o'clock.
I see.
You were sleeping like a baby.
Oh.
What are you making?
A sandwich.
Oh, that's good. I'm hungover, so I wanted something light for my stomach. I'll make you some coffee.
My husband being kind and considerate like that was making it hard for me. Who were you drinking with last night?
Who? Just a coworker from work.
Was it with a woman?
No, of course not. It was just a bunch of guys drinking together. But I get drunk more when it's like that.
That's what my husband says, laughing it off. Why are you lying?
What? Lying? I'm not lying. What's wrong, Catherine? You don't seem like yourself today.
Of course. How can I stay calm after seeing a scene like this? I said that and showed my husband a picture I took on my phone. It was a picture of my husband and that woman coming out of the office with their arms around each other. You were late last night drinking with her, weren't you? That means that you were having an affair with this person, right? I questioned my husband with tears streaming down my face. He looked at me wide-eyed, but then he sighed and smiled.
It can't be helped if you found out. Yeah, I've been cheating on you.
Why are you so brazen about it?
Because I don't have to hide it anymore. Let's just get a divorce. She's young and pretty, and I fell in love with her at first sight. I'll leave you and remarry her.
My husband didn't seem guilty at all. He's such a jerk. I have no idea why I married this man. No, why couldn't I see the true nature of this man? I was so frustrated. I ran out from the house that instant. But even though I left, I had nowhere to go. So I went back to my parents' house. My parents were not home, but my brother was. Hey, why are you here?
I'm house-sitting for them.
House-sitting? I hadn't seen my brother for a long time. My brother was a business owner and a man who traveled around overseas. He was always very busy. He was unable to attend our family meeting before our marriage, and he was only able to attend the first part of our wedding because he had to fly overseas. He was such a busy man that it had been a long time since I had seen him properly. Where are Mom and Dad?
Actually, I gave them a trip to Hawaii to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary, so I'm staying here with my wife while they're away. My wife's at the hair salon right now. Anyway, what brings you to your parents' house all of a sudden?
My brother asked, and I remembered that I came here after a fight with my husband. Actually, when I told my brother what happened, he just laughed with a big smile on his face.
Well, good for you.
I didn't understand why my brother was laughing and acting all cheerful about it. What's so good about it?
Okay, I'm sorry. But you were right to leave a guy like that. I'll take care of the rest.
What? He said that out of the blue. I was appalled at my brother's lack of delicacy, but I never thought something like that would happen. I stayed at my parents' house that day, and I enjoyed the delicious home-cooked food my sister-in-law had prepared. About 3 days later, my husband suddenly came to my parents' house. I was at home with my brother and sister-in-law and was surprised to see my husband on the intercom. What on earth do you want? I don't want to talk to you, I said to my husband as I opened the door. Then he suddenly got down on his knees.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
What? What is this?
If you don't forgive me, I'm going to be in big trouble.
Saying that, my husband rubbed his forehead on the floor. Seeing my husband on his knees apologizing, I recalled my brother's words. Did something happen?
What do you think happened, huh? I'm about to get fired.
What? Why?
Don't play dumb. Why didn't you tell me your brother is the president of Raven Solutions?
What? Raven Solutions? My brother's company is not that big. That's why I was so surprised to hear him say that. And then my brother's wife added that he had taken over the company last year at the request of the previous president. I hadn't seen my brother and his wife for a long time, so I had no idea about his recent situation. His company is an important client of the company where my husband works. According to the story, my brother told the president of my husband's company about the whole situation. Moreover, my husband's affair partner was apparently the daughter of the president of the company. My husband was serious about their relationship, but for her it was just a fling. But it didn't matter what it was. The fact that my husband had an affair with the daughter of the president of the company he works for, and betrayed the sister of the president of an important client company was enough to bring him down socially. It was more than enough to get him fired. And although he would never be forgiven, my brother told my husband that if he apologized to me, he could ask his president to withdraw his dismissal. That was why he came to apologize to me. I despised him for apologizing so desperately just to save his own skin. I will never forgive you. Go to hell. With these words, I kicked him out of the house.
Catherine, please, save me. We loved each other so many times, didn't we?
My husband says all kinds of convenient things, one after the other. If you keep on staying there, I'll call the police. When I said that, he ran away in a hurry, as if he realized it was a bad idea. After that, I divorced my husband through an attorney and filed for alimony against him and the affair partner. My husband could not escape from his layoff, and is now working as a part-timer while trying desperately to pay back the alimony. Of course, there was no way he could be seen attractive as a part-timer with debts, and the affair was just for fun, so he was dumped by the woman immediately. Meanwhile, I decided to go back to my parents' house and start job hunting. I often serve home-cooked meals to my parents, and they tell me that they are very delicious. The cooking skills I've acquired during my marriage will come in handy in the future, so I want to sustain my skills. I've never thought of doing it before, but I'm now thinking of posting pictures of my daily lunches and their recipes on social media. At any rate, now that I've gotten rid of the lousy man in my life, I'm going to do more and more of the things I like to do for myself. He's a really lousy husband for sneaking around happily and having an affair and changing his attitude like that right after he gets caught. You can never get away with doing something wrong. I was surprised that Catherine found out about the affair from an unexpected place, and I'm glad that she was able to bring her husband to justice. I hope she will continue to get along with her brother, parents, and friends, and find new happiness in the future. Thank you for watching to the end. Please subscribe to our channel if you liked our story. See you in the next video.